Hey, everybody out there. Thanks for joining us right after lunch. Sorry, we were having a little delay. I had to get a new Zoom password for some reason. I couldn't quite figure out why, but luckily John Flores let me into the meeting. So let's see, how many people do we have out there? It looks like quite a few. So that's great. Glad you all could join us. And let me just kick things off with just an acknowledgement of the obvious, which is it's been really tough out there for your folks and for my folks as well. And I just wanted to thank you all for the great work you've been doing under really phenomenal and different kinds of circumstances. I know those of you who do know me know I have a pretty long-standing personal commitment to our tribal work, and I can assure you that we are advocating actively across the many programs that are in our division, and frankly, even beyond, to make sure that headquarters and other regions and so forth are really aware of the importance of the tribal work, of our responsibilities to support tribes and our commitment to support tribes. So I wish very much I was able to see you all in person, but I do want to give a special thanks to John and his team, as well as Deirdre Nuri of my team and Angela Sandoval of my team, and frankly, the rest of my management and staff are helping do the work they do all year. But Deirdre and Angela helped me a bunch on just getting these slides together. What I've tried to do and what we're trying in this afternoon is put together a package to inform you guys about what's up, but also try to present a lot of opportunities and options for you to take action to help do real things to protect the environment and do environmental stuff, and with or without COVID. Some of these things will be limited by COVID, of course, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for all of us to do more. I'm going to be a little loose on this because I've actually been under the weather the last few days, so it took all the practice time out of this. So we're going to wing it a little bit, and what we're going to do is I'm going to be asking John to help me forward the slides and manage the chat, and probably in the middle I'll take a little break as it seems appropriate to take a few questions at that point, and then certainly take a bunch at the end. So feel free at any time to use the chat box, and we'll get going from there. So again, this is the Land, Chemicals, and Redevelopment Division. As you probably heard from a number of places, we've had a lot of reorganizations. So next slide, maybe I just give you a quick overview of what's in the Land, Chemicals, and Redevelopment Division. So we've
John, there we go. Sorry.
We've got the org chart here, and I'll just explain real quick. That's me at the top, Jeff Scott. And underneath on the left-hand side is Kathy Taylor, who is my branch chief for a lot of programs that have significant tribal portions to it. And I'm going to be covering each of those programs to some degree today, but the toxics and brownfields section includes the lead program and brownfields program, and that's managed by Adrian Prisilak. And so we'll definitely have a few things to talk about on that. The pesticides section, Patty Tenbrook is the manager there, and we will cover a number of items in the pesticides section that are relevant to tribes, as well as we have the zero waste section with Angela Sandoval, and that includes a plethora of programs in a relatively small section, including tribal solid waste management, recycling, pollution prevention, and so forth. So we'll spend some time on that. Up at the top, the Planning and State Development Office with Cheryl Nelson as the manager. You probably don't deal with that quite as much. It's more like the Center for Grants and our hazardous waste program grants and information management, financial assurance, a lot of the hazardous waste program stuff, but very important in terms of our management of grants across the division. In the RCRA branch, Nicole Mutu, who some of you have probably met over time, is our manager there. And we have 3 sections there. One is the corrective action section, where we focus on hazardous waste cleanup sites. We have a universe of over 300 high priority sites in the region that we work on with our states primarily. We also have a large number of PCB cleanups, which we are the lead on and have to do all the approvals for. At any given time, we probably have about 75 PCB cleanups in the queue at some stage or another. The permits section works on hazardous waste permits and PCB permits. And we have a extensive permit universe that we primarily work with states on, but we also work with tribes on. In the one instance in the region where there's a RCRA permit that is issued to a tribe, and I'll cover that a bit later. And then we also have the underground storage tanks section, and we have a new manager for that, Allison Fong. She recently took over for Steve Linder, so we're happy to have Allison join the group, and I'll cover that briefly as well. I forgot to mention that Barbara Gross is the manager of our permits section, and Steve Arman is the manager of our corrective action section. So with that, let me get cracking into some of these programs. Next slide. The first program I'm going to talk about is the lead paint program.
Sorry, I'm having difficulty moving these slides. I don't know why. John, do you have any clues on why it's freezing up?
Deidre, no, I don't. If you just use your arrow, does it not? If you just click right on your arrow, does it not move the next slide?
No, it's not working.
Well, I'm starting to freeze up here. No, just
I'm
kidding.
so sorry. I'm just trying all these arrows here and nothing's going.
Nothing seems to be working there.
No.
Well, let me tell you about the lead paint program for a second.
Here we go.
There we go. All right. So a rule that is related to the lead paint program that started not that long ago, or was changed not that long ago, is the renovation, repair, and painting program. And basically, this regulation requires that contractors be licensed to work on any lead paint, any building that has lead paint that's bigger than your hand, a little bigger than that, but not much more. And so our dynamic team of 2 staff people that work on the lead paint program do a lot in terms of training providers. So all the people that are going to work on lead paint need to get certification that they've passed their training and know what they're doing in terms of safety for lead paint abatement and work with buildings that have lead paint. And so our group works with the folks that actually provide the training to make sure that the trainers are doing an adequate job of training contractors that want to work on lead paint, and are completely legit, both in terms of making sure that people actually pass the courses before they get certifications and making sure that they are doing a good job at it. We also serve as a center of excellence in the lead program nationally to issue the certificates to people that have completed lead paint training. Another area that we spend a fair amount of time on, and our folks are definitely open and interested in providing technical assistance to tribes on the lead paint program and the requirements and how to work forward, but they spend a lot of time trying to do outreach to contractors, licensing boards, code enforcement officers, local governments, state governments, to try to encourage them to have a system in place where they make sure that contractors are using safe practices when they deal with buildings with lead paint. And generally, lead paint is pre-1978 structures. Next slide. So this will give you a taste of what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to explain a little bit about these different programs and what might be of interest, and then leave you information on the contacts that can help you with these programs. Nancy Kane and Angela Barranco are our two staff people that work on the lead paint program, and I'm sure they're happy to help you. In addition, I've listed Matt Salazar in our enforcement office, as he's the manager of the enforcement unit that deals with lead paint. Next slide. So now the Brownfields program. Brownfields program is one of the programs that came to our division about 1.5 years ago. And we are really excited to have it be part of our program. We've got listed here, and I'm not going to go over all of these. We've got some examples of current recent grantees, tribal grantees for our targeted brownfields assessment program. And what it is assessment. So this is a program where you can come to us with projects that you're trying to redevelop, and we have a contractor on board that works with Lisa Hanusak, our lead person in this area, to actually do assessments of contaminated properties. And you'll see by the examples that are listed here, there's some really big ones like the Hoopa project and the Tohono O'odham projects, which are rather large. And then you'll see even smaller ones like the old day school building listed here for the Goshute Reservation. So we have a number of different grants out there currently, and we are really interested in getting proposals for additional grants. Next slide, or additional projects, I should say. And so you can get in touch with Lisa anytime. We kind of do this on a rolling basis, and once the government gets funded, we're going to get some new funding for FY21. And we're hopeful to be able to fund some more tribal assessment projects that will help you move parcels and buildings towards redevelopment opportunities. Next slide. So I'm going to cover like 3 different kinds of brownfields grants and then give you all the contact information for each. The most competitive grants that we have, the ones that go through a national competition, are our assessment, cleanup, and multi-purpose grants. It's really highly competitive, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. Proposals are due next week, October 28th. But if you haven't already been working on your proposal for a long time with our folks, you shouldn't try to apply all of a sudden in a week. These are, like I said, highly competitive. We want more tribes to get funded just like these, but it's a project that our folks can only work with you on when it's not during the actual competition period. But we do very much want to work with people on how to compete for these grants and so forth. Next slide. The next kind of grants in the Brownfields program are the 128A grants. These basically establish tribal response programs. As you can see from the slide, we have 14 tribes received funding in the past year. And this is really working with us to set up a comprehensive Brownfields program for your tribe. Right now, what's open is the comment period for FY22. The 21 awards have already been awarded. And so if you're looking to establish one of these programs, the time to apply will come later. But we are definitely interested in working with you if you are interested in standing up a program. Of course, that's going to take a lot of work, so don't underestimate it. If you're just starting out or you're a smaller tribe and you only have 1 or 2 properties that you think are of potential interest, I do encourage you to think hard about the starting out, at least, with the targeted Brownfields assessment program. That's the first one I covered. So next slide. So here's an example. Often in getting work on the ground done, it's about leverage and leveraging different pieces. And so at this project at Salt River, it's a good example of it, where the assessment, targeted brownfield assessment program, our contractors helped assess this tower, this old racetrack tower, and then funds were leveraged from other programs, in this instance, the 128.8 program, but often it can be the Public Works Department or some other private sector even that's interested in redevelopment or can bring funds to the table to help with the actual cleanup or marketing that's needed to make a brownfields site viable. Next slide. So here's the important part. Here's your contacts in the Brownfields program, and I know that they are very anxious to talk to you. Jose Garcia, just generally, and has been working with tribes for a long time and is the point on the Arizona tribes, but I'm sure he's happy to talk to you about any tribal programs. Lisa Hanusak is our state of Nevada lead, but also, as I mentioned, those targeted brownfields assessments where it's project by project and you come to talk to us about cleanups. She's the lead for those. And then Richie Donahue, who's a new member of our team, is going to be working with Northern California tribes, the state of Arizona on brownfields cleanups. So again, these slides are going to be available. So if you can't write it down fast enough, there is something to look at in terms of references. And I'm just going to keep rolling for another minute and cover the pesticides program, and then maybe I'll take a couple minutes for questions, and then we'll move on to solid waste and other exciting programs. So pesticides program, we have about a half a dozen folks that work in the pesticides program. In Region 9, we have the largest number of farm workers in the country. We also have the largest number of types of crops in the country. And California is actually the #1 ag state in the country. So there's a lot of interest in things like worker protection and pesticides in our region, clearly. One of the hot things that we're dealing with more recently is a relatively new rule related to the use of restricted use pesticides. These are pesticides that are more toxic, more dangerous, and therefore special training is needed for applicators to be able to use these pesticides. And we had a revision of the rules associated with that. And so we're working with states and developing a national plan for how to manage this area for tribes as well. Another area that's changed in the last few years is we had new standards come out for worker protection. And we've spent a lot of time on training for worker protection, both for workers themselves, but also partnering with ITCA on training tribal inspectors. A number of the grants that we put out there for tribes are, generally speaking, oversimplification, but to help tribes set up their own inspection and enforcement programs for the pesticides program. And then we also, of course, have our staff working on pesticide training through the RTOC, the tribal conference, and beyond quite a bit in terms of pesticides. And I'll have the contacts for you here in a second. Next slide. One last area that's been taking an incredible amount of people's time lately is related to COVID. So EPA and headquarters makes decisions about what pesticides can be used in our country. And one area that's directly related to COVID is that cleaning products, pesticides, disinfectants, whichever way you want to call it, that are used on surfaces to kill germs are regulated by EPA, and that's on surfaces. And so we have what's called the IN list, which is the list of disinfectants that are approved by EPA. And that's the list of disinfectants that would be approved for use on surfaces for preventing the spread of COVID. And so you can imagine that there's been a lot of activity going on about communicating about that and so forth. The key thing for the layperson to remember that isn't in the heart of the pesticides program is that we have the in list. It's available on our internet site, and you can check and see whether a disinfectant that somebody's using to clean surfaces to prevent the spread of COVID is actually one of the ones that's approved by EPA. Next slide. All right, and then here's our a couple of our contacts on the pesticide program. Peter Early has the lead for tribal issues. And then of course, our manager, Patty Tenbrook, who's the greatest know-it-all I've ever known on the world of pesticides, just about, is our manager of the pesticides section. So with that, let me just pause for a second and see if there are any questions on that first part. Note that we are going to still cover the solid waste program, recycling, underground tanks, and the hazardous waste program. But I thought it's after lunch, you might fall asleep with my boring voice. So any questions right now? Do we have any in the chat box? I can't actually see it.
Hey, John,
Hey, Jeff,
anything in the
this is
chat
John.
box?
No, we don't have anything in the chat box yet. So if anyone would like to place a question in the chat box or go ahead and unmute themselves and ask now.
Well, we got a lot of exciting stuff to come.
All right, Jeff. Yeah, why don't we continue on towards that exciting stuff?
All right, very good. Yeah, so I mentioned in the beginning, I wanted to give you guys some opportunities. So there's sort of the learn stuff, and there were a few opportunities in the last section where I was talking about grants and so forth. But I want to give you some opportunities. Again, most of this is optional, but you know, there's no end of opportunities for good deed doing out there. So I wanted to expose you guys to at least a few of them. So we have a number of what I guess I would call voluntary programs. Some are a little different than that, but just for the sake of grouping them that I wanted to cover that are opportunities. So we have something called the Food Waste Food Recovery Challenge. And really what's behind this is that an amazing amount of the food that's produced, upwards of half the food that's produced in many instances never gets consumed. And so we want to look at that real hard, both in terms of preventing food waste, but if there is food waste, making sure that it goes to the highest and best use. So we have a challenge program that businesses, schools, government entities can sign up for to help in the fight against food waste, because no one likes waste. And it includes recognition and technical assistance. So I'm going to zip through these fast. There's quite a few of these opportunities. So next slide, please. The WasteWise program. Again, this is related primarily to recycling and solid waste. It's an opportunity, if nothing else. They have some great resources on the website related to WasteWise to help you with trying to communicate with folks about what's recyclable, what's not, signs, free sign makers. And then there's also a challenge program you can sign up to try to increase recycling and so forth. That comes with recognition as well. So one more opportunity. And our contact for that program in Region 9 is listed at the bottom, Jenny Stevenson. And I think I forgot to mention that Andre Biasanor was on the Food Recovery Challenge as the contact. Next, as you all realize, there's a lot more e-waste every day, and the recycling of and reuse and long-term management of electronics is a big issue. We've all seen pictures, I'm sure, over time of e-waste being exported overseas, being picked through by children and so forth. So there's some things that all of us can do to prevent that. Number one, EPEAT, which is the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool. It's a mouthful, so we just call it EPEAT all the time. But this is a way you can make sure that you are buying greener electronics, electronics that are made with less toxics, are more recyclable, and more energy efficient. And so EPEAT is a label that you can look for on buying electronics. And we encourage everybody to, or I will personally encourage all of you to see if you can get your tribe or other entities to buy EPEAT certified electronics to help make sure that you're buying top quality electronics, as well as you're buying them with the long-term stewardship and waste management in mind. When you do end up with extra electronics, we recommend that you use what we call third-party electronics recyclers. There's a couple of programs, eStewards and R2 Responsible Recycling, that they basically are third parties that go around and certify the practices of recyclers to make sure that they're following safe and environmental practices. So if you have a lot of e-waste and you're trying to get rid of it, we encourage you to use a vendor that is either that is certified as an eSteward or an R2 responsible recycling vendor. And then John Katz is our local expert on electronics in Region 9. Next slide. Just generally, I'd like to encourage folks to do the obvious, but if we buy things that are more durable and last longer, it creates less waste. As well as we all know, we're having trouble in the world of recycling and solid waste because the price of materials that are recycled, whether it's cans or bottles or paper, has dropped. And one way we can all help contribute to having higher prices for recycled materials and then making our recycling programs more viable is to encourage people to do what we say, buy recycled. So buying things made of recycled materials. We at EPA have a recycled product guideline and supplier directory. So we encourage you to not only when it's you to go out and buy, for example, paper that's made of 100% recycled post-consumer content, but also try to get your office, your tribe, your government agencies to buy things that contain recycled materials. Next slide. We have a program managed out of headquarters called the Safer Choice Program. And it deals primarily with things related to cleaning. And basically it makes, it's a labeling program to make sure that the cleaning products are using the safest materials possible that get the job done. And if you look, you can go to Costco or you can go to Walmart or you can go to wherever you do your shopping, and you'll see in the cleaning products and detergents and so forth, this label will be part of it. And so I encourage people when you're doing your own shopping, or even when you're talking about the janitorial staff for your offices or otherwise, that recommend that we use these safer for the user of the product and safer in terms of the impacts on the environment, safer choice labeled products. Next slide. Now this is harder and takes more work, but has a lot of opportunities. In a lot of places, I've been in tribal country, of course, there's a shortage of housing and people are building new homes and new buildings. And it usually costs a little bit more to build them green. But what I mean by building them green is making them be energy efficient, water efficient. A lot of tribal country is in places where the price of energy is high and where the price of water is high. And so I can't say enough about the opportunity that's there for the benefits of greener building. You have the ability as a tribe to set up your own tribal green building codes, and then HUD or whoever's helping provide property would have to meet those codes. And as you all know, there's kind of two prices of home ownership, if you will. There's the price to build it, and then there's the price to maintain it. And really, the operation and maintenance part, the maintaining part, is usually where we have the least amount of money. And so it often ends up that if you can spend a little more upfront to make it more energy efficient, in particular, make it more water efficient, et cetera, then the operating cost or the monthly cost to whoever lives in the building or uses the building goes way down. So this is an opportunity. Timothy Hood is our staff person contact on that. We also have what you see here, the Green Building Toolkit, which our staff invested a lot of time in over the years to develop. Next. So here's my little message. Yes, I can't tell if you're laughing at it or not, but that's my bathroom. Yes, it's stuck in the 80s. Yes, it needs an update. But my message is actually the bucket there. I leave the bucket in the shower every day. And what we do is when we're starting the shower off and the water's coming out cold, and since I'm a wimp, I fill the bucket with the cold water until the water turns hot. And then I use that water close by at the local toilet to flush with. And that way you save money from not going down the drain when the shower turns on, and you save money by not having to pay for water when the toilet goes down. And so you can actually save a lot of water just by doing this. And my message isn't so much about my bathroom needing an overhaul as much as there's a lot of choices that we can all make, whether it's buying energy efficient, Energy Star rated products, or using shower heads that are certified by WaterSense. There's a bunch of programs out there for actions that everybody can take that typically save you resources and money over the long run and make a difference in the environment. So I just wanted to encourage you all to, especially when you're hunkered down at home, it's a good time to look around and see what each of us can do better ourselves. Next slide. So the Tribal Solid Waste Program, we have a small but nimble team working on that. So I'm going to cover a few things in particular in terms of what we're trying to do on outreach and training. But as most of you know, we don't get grant money really for solid waste for states or tribes. So we have to work very closely with our friends in the GAP program to try to leverage the GAP money and any other resources we can find to help adopt sound solid waste management practices, which particularly in rural environments is easier said than done. Another piece of what we're doing with our 2 to 3 people is there's a lot of technical issues associated with landfills, and we have to process those on tribal lands. We generally do not get in the business of landfills and landfill operation in state lands, but just the way the statute and the regs work, we do get involved in the larger landfills on tribal lands. And then last, I just mentioned that every couple of years we have a pollution prevention grant program. The Paula tribe recently successfully competed for that and did a project, and they've got a lot of good stuff that they've been doing with greening tribal businesses and setting up household hazardous waste. Well, there's 2 different grants. I get them confused, but we actually have been having a great partnership with the Paula tribe on pollution prevention outreach to businesses, as well as setting up household hazardous waste and collection systems. I'm not going to push this one since the next time to compete is spring of 2022. So we'll remind you when the time gets closer, when it's next time to try to compete for some money nationally. Again, on tribal solid waste, we've had to pivot with COVID. We had in mind a whole lot of in-person trainings in a few areas. One of those areas was solid waste transfer stations, and we pivoted to online training. And so we had one version earlier, and there's a new set of trainings coming up for solid waste transfer stations in November and December. So we encourage you to sign up if this is an area of interest to you. And Deirdre Nuri at the bottom there is the contact. Next slide. Another area that we've been working on in terms of training and resources is community-based social marketing. And what that really means is, how do you get people to do the right thing? How do you get people to sort their stuff? How do you get people to not litter? How do you get people to put the trash in the bin? We've got workshops that have started, and there's a couple workshops left that start in November. So again, Deirdre Nuri is the contact for those. And then another area that had been in each of these areas, we came up with based on input from the tribes on what they'd be interested in. Of course, all the tribes are very different, so people have different interests, but more people were interested in these areas than others, so we went with it. The last area I was going to cover on this was composting, and we've wait a second, can't see. We had a couple sessions already that occurred, and what we're going to try to do is have another clinic for tribes for sometime in the next few months to do some more on composting. Next slide. So more important than listening to me talk about it, here are the contacts for tribal solid waste. For California, it's Deirdre Nuri. For Nevada and the Eastern Sierra tribes, it's Jenny Stevenson. In Arizona, I should have mentioned that Robert Seaman, we recently hired to be a circuit rider based in Tucson to focus on the Arizona tribes. It's just a little hard to ride the circuit right now in terms of visiting tribes, and that's true for all of us. But I know everybody on our team is more than happy to try to support you all in these difficult issues. I've got one great expert on the world of landfills, and that's Steve Wall. And so he's very busy working on a couple of tribal landfills, but also is helping us out in terms of working on the brand new coal combustion residuals rule requirement that has come out. Luckily, there's only a couple of those facilities in Region 9. I mentioned the pollution prevention grants to tribes, and Jessica Arnold is the contact for that. And of course, the manager of all of these different programs I just described is Angela Sandoval down at the bottom. Next slide. So let me move over to our other branch, the underground storage tanks program. We've had a very long-term commitment working on underground storage tanks for both states and tribes. We have quite a few tank facilities in Region 9 of the universe, but one thing I'd like to mention is that I feel like we've had a tremendous success in terms of cleaning up leaking tanks over the past few years. You can see the number there that we've cleaned up in Region 9, 263 less sites across 27 tribes, and we're down to 46 left. So that's a great deal of progress. Now, of course, a number of the ones left are more difficult and more expensive, but we are trying very hard to compete for money to help pay for those cleanups and continue to make progress until we get all the less sites in tribal country cleaned up, as well as the less sites on state lands as well. In terms of the UST facilities, the underground storage tank facilities, often gas stations, but it could be other types of facilities that have fuel tanks underground. They're required to be inspected at a minimum of every 3 years. I know our enforcement division is working on that and anxious to get back in the field and do more on that. Right now, they're trying to look at ways to check on compliance more remotely to try to ensure that the tanks that are out there and are operating don't become leaking underground storage tanks. And then we, I think just for the sake of time, I'm just going to mention that Allison Fong, as I said before, is our new manager of the underground storage tank program, and Simona is our contact for are grants that we have for tribes currently. Next slide. Hazardous waste program, although the hazardous waste program is the biggest program, although it's not that big anymore, we have in our division, it is relatively small in terms of its footprint on tribal lands, and that's probably a good thing. So there's only one facility in the entire country that actually requires a RCRA hazardous waste permit, and that facility is on the Colorado River Indian Tribe. And so I have a great thank you to Wilfred and the team at CRIT for the many years we've worked with them to get this facility permitted, and it has been permitted, and it went through a number of appeals, but we've imposed, I think, undeniably the most extensive set of controls on this facility compared to any facility like it in the country. And we will continue to work on making sure that this facility is operated in a safe manner. It basically takes spent carbon, the kind of carbon that's used on filtering water for contaminants, or can be used in air scrubbers. It could also be used in my fish tank downstairs, but you take the carbon once it's filled with contaminants and you take it to a facility like this one and heat it up and burn the contaminants out of there. And then you are able to reuse that carbon to do more cleanups in the future. Next slide. Also in the hazardous waste program, what you do often have is small quantity generators, and they need ID numbers and they need to comply with regulations. And so here's the contacts related to ID numbers. We do have a new rule. There's a lot of new rules in the hazardous waste program, but that would take 2 hours by itself. But there's one for small quantity generators that requires them all to re-notify by September of 2021, and to make sure that we have current data on all potential generators. And so that's one of the rules of interest, I thought, for all across the nation. And then, as I mentioned earlier, but poorly, the Pala tribe has gotten a grant that they competed for nationally to help develop a more sophisticated household hazardous waste and universal waste program. And they're doing a lot of work to try to develop materials for other tribes associated with that work. The next time that folks will be able to compete for hazardous waste money, and really it's not a lot of money, it's like, I want to say 300,000 nationally, will be coming open in March, and then Deirdre will be the contact for that. Next slide. So I asked my folks, I'm not going to go over all of these, but I asked my folks to think about, okay, if everybody has to be under COVID restrictions, are there things that they can work on that help maintain momentum so that hopefully when next spring or wherever it is, when we can all get our shots and go back towards a life that's more normal, what are things that folks could be doing right now? And we have a number of them here that relate to working on solid waste management plans and procedures and getting organized. There's of course doing training, moving to electronic records. So a lot of things here that we just listed in order to give people ideas of things they can do in the interim while we're all suffering through this COVID pandemic and so forth. Down at the bottom, I mentioned a number of those voluntary programs that folks can sign up for. So with that, I think we can just leave it on that slide and call it good. So questions or comments from the chat?
Hey Jeff, this is John. Let's see, we have a question here. Why are we not hearing more about the permit branch? Their actions are where most of the division's consultations seem to come from.
Well, you know, I could talk a lot about a lot of things. The main thing there was that we EPA don't issue very many hazardous waste permits. That's usually done by the state. The exception is the Evoqua facility that I mentioned that's on the Colorado River Indian Tribe. And then we do get involved when there is a PCB permit. There are only 6 facilities that require a PCB permit. So when one of those is coming up, we definitely do notify any tribe anywhere close and ask for input and so forth. But it was just a decision based on the amount of time we had and my assessment of which programs might be of more interest to more people.
Great. We have another question. It says, can or does EPA address the manufacturing companies ever to regulate safer packaging?
I think the simpler answer to that is not really. We don't necessarily have the legal authority to do that. What we do is encourage people to use safer packaging and to use packaging with recycled content, for example, in cardboard and so forth.
Great. And there was another questions. This was earlier, but I think it was answered in the chat box, but I'll go ahead and ask the question and read off what I believe is the answer. Someone asked, will these challenges be highlighted in the next Region 9 quarterly newsletter? Then someone responded, as of the moment, this was not yet a topic in the Region 9 newsletter, but there is a highlight nationally on programs within SMM in the Tribal Waste Journal. And then they gave a link to that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I think one thing I didn't take time to talk about is that we have something called America Recycles Day and Week coming up in mid-November. There's a lot of work going on nationally to take a look at what can be done to encourage more recycling and address some of the issues I talked about. Everyone is invited to attend that, and as the information becomes easier to get, well, actually, I think we can be sure. I think we can share that information with everyone, because I made a point just today. Actually, we were on a national call this morning where this topic came up, and I tried to reinforce the importance of tribal programs and our unique responsibilities and trust responsibilities to support tribal programs. And often I think in DC, they get caught up in, this is somewhat understandable, the big numbers and so forth, but it takes a village, and the issues associated with solid waste management and the price for recycled materials and whether there's a good place and a good market to take them are really difficult. And so it's going to take really, I think it will take some national leadership to make a dent in increasing the amount of recycling going on. So I'm glad that the current administration has committed themselves to take a hard look at that.
And then we have another question, Jeff. It says, do the permit branch folks come to our talk to learn about the tribal issues?
Yes.
Great. Any other questions? If anyone wants to go ahead and unmute themselves and ask, or type into the chat box, now is your chance. If not, you see where Jeff's email is located, and this presentation is available on the Tribal EPA conference website. This presentation was also recorded, this Zoom meeting, so we'll be putting this on the Tribal EPA website if you'd like to rewatch this recording. Any closing words, Jeff?
Well, I'd tell you, if you saw it the first time, I'm not sure I'd recommend rewatching this performance, but no, I really appreciate everyone joining us. I wish I could see you all virtually or otherwise, but I really appreciate folks' attention to these important issues. And as you can tell, we've got a whole lot of programs that are important to tribes in this division. And for each of them, we tend to have just a couple people working. So we really appreciate your input on, how we set the priorities and everything. But I can assure you that we understand that in the end, we're all in this together. You all are the boots on the ground. You know what's going on the ground, and we're totally relying on your success to make a big difference. And I know I speak for our team that I'm excited about the things I've seen done in tribal country over the last 30 years. I've been working with tribes on things from solid waste and beyond, but there's plenty left to do, as we all know. But it's hard in these difficult times, I think, to remember. I know I have trouble remembering what it used to look like and what it looks like now. And there's been some phenomenal successes out there, thanks to the hard work of folks out there everywhere, as well as our folks. So I just I want to say that number one, stay healthy, stay safe. I've had a fever the last couple days, so I'm going in for my nose job this afternoon, but I think I'll be okay. But stay healthy out there.
No. Jeff's sufficient right now. All right. Thank
John?
you, Jeff. Yes.
Hey, John, on behalf of EPA, I just really want to thank Sam Pasqual for just managing this remote conference so well. You know, it was not your plan, I know, to gather everybody virtually, but you've been so gracious and have created such a warm feeling with just the way that you've handled and facilitated, you and your team have facilitated all these calls and really presented a real seamless effort. And we're really grateful for that. Thank you, John.
Great, thank you very much. I hope everyone's enjoyed the conference. We have, a few more. Tomorrow's a closing ceremony, so please come on and join us for the closing. We had the award ceremony at lunch. That went really well. We had karaoke at one lunchtime. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, it wasn't what we had planned, and we changed midstream, but it's going pretty well. But we hope next year we can all meet in person again. So thank you. Take care, everyone. Well, I got to run. I got to let the Arizona session end. So bye, everybody.
Thanks.